Hey there, sleepyheads. Welcome back to the channel. Before we drift into the story of forgotten creature Ooo, I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from tonight? And what time is it for you right now? Drop it in the comments below. It's always magical seeing how far and wide this sleepy little community reaches. All right, lights low, blankets up. Let's talk about a snail. Not a grand wizard, not a fierce beast, or a cosmic god. Just a snail with a little smile. But if you've been paying attention, you know this isn't just any snail. It's the snail, a tiny, waving, almost always silent observer, tucked into the backgrounds of episodes like a secret left just for you to find. It doesn't speak, it doesn't fight, and it rarely even moves. But it's always there, watching, and the more you see it, the stranger it becomes. Because eventually, it stops being a cute Easter egg and starts feeling like something else. Something older, something watching you back. Let's rewind to the very beginning. The snail appears in nearly every episode of Adventure Time's early seasons, quietly tucked into scenes like a forest background, a castle wall, or even the reflection of a sword. It's not loud. It never draws attention to itself, but it waves. Slowly, patiently. A single spiraled, eye-catching detail in the middle of Oo's chaos. At first, fans thought it was just a quirky running gag, a visual treat for the keen-eyed viewer. You spot it, you smile, you move on. But the creators, they knew exactly what they were doing. Because eventually, the snail broke the fourth wall in the most unsettling way. You see, in Season 2, Episode 25, Mortal Folly, something shifts. The snail doesn't just appear in the background anymore. It becomes important. It becomes the vessel. That's right, the snail becomes possessed by the Lich. The ancient, terrifying force of destruction that wants to wipe all life from the face of Ooo. And it uses this quiet, unassuming creature as its doorway. That twist alone changed everything. Because it meant the snail had a role, a purpose. It wasn't just a joke, it was canon. Now close your eyes for a second and imagine this. A being so gentle, so quiet, so unnoticed, becomes the doorway for evil itself. What kind of creature could hold the Lich inside without breaking? Why did the Lich choose this snail? And where did it go when the Lich moved on? We never truly find out. The show doesn't give us a flashback of the snail's origins or a big speech revealing its power. It just continues to appear, sometimes post-possession, sometimes almost like nothing happened. That's the strange beauty of Adventure Time. Its mysteries are half whispers, not explanations. Let's talk for a moment about symbolism. The spiral of a snail's shell, it's a shape found in nature everywhere. Galaxy spiral, storm spiral, even fingerprint spiral. It's a shape of time, of cycles, of quiet infinity. So what if the snail isn't just a creature, but a symbol of continuity? Always present, always watching. A gentle reminder that time loops, life cycles, and everything is always moving, slowly, toward something. And maybe that's why it's so calming to see it. Even when it's creepy, even when it's linked to something darker, it's still there, like the moon in the sky, like a thought you've had before and can't remember where from, like something that knows you've seen it and is glad you noticed. Now, let's zoom in on a few specific sightings. In tree trunks, the snail is just hanging out on a tree innocuous. In the eyes, it's nestled beside a sleeping Finn, almost protectively. In the Lich, it appears at the heart of the well of power, possessed and deadly. And in Finn, the human, we see it again, just briefly. But it raises a strange question. Does the snail exist across all timelines, or only the true ones? That's when the theories start to spiral out, just like the shell itself. Some fans believe the snail is a multiversal constant, a creature that slips between timelines like water slipping through fingers. Others think it's not a creature at all, but a spell, a leftover enchantment from a long-forgotten wizard cursed to exist forever in background spaces. One of the eeriest yet most oddly comforting theories is this. The snail doesn't just watch the story. It remembers it. When timelines collapse, when characters die, when magic fades or returns, the snail is there, quietly remembering it all so that someone will. Even if no one else does. And maybe that's why it waved. Not to say hello, but to say, I see you. And maybe even, I'll remember you. It's oddly fitting, isn't it? That in a world filled with giant demons, elemental kingdoms, ancient prophecies, and magical battles, the thing that's quietly ever present is a snail. A being that moves slowly, softly, never in a rush. Almost like it knows there's no need to hurry when you've seen it all before. And here's something even stranger. The snail disappears from regular appearances after season 6. Not entirely, but it fades from the rhythm. Just like a dream slips away the moment you wake up. There's no grand goodbye, no final wave. Just absence. So what happened? Well, there are a few theories. Some say that once the Lich was truly defeated, the snail's duty was done. Its role as a vessel fulfilled, so it drifted back into the background, its purpose served, its presence no longer needed. Others think it was a choice by the animators, a quiet farewell to a beloved tradition. After all, once something becomes expected, it's no longer hidden. And the snail's greatest power was always its mystery. But maybe, just maybe, it's more poetic than that. Maybe the snail is like magic itself in the Land of Ooo, always present, even when invisible, shifting, fading, reappearing when the world needs it most. Let's revisit that idea of multiversal constants. We've seen how Adventure Time plays with alternate realities, timelines, and pocket dimensions, from farm world to the pillow world, to the time room and beyond. And yet in many of these realities, there the snail is again, subtle, unchanged, quiet. No matter what version of Finn exists, a warlord, a farmer, a dreamer, the snail is there. Not always, but often enough to raise a quiet question. Is the snail a fixed point? Like Prismo's time room? Like the Enchiridion? A kind of thread stitched into the very fabric of Oo's reality? There's an old saying that history is written by the victors. But what if it's remembered by the quiet ones? The ones who never speak, never interfere, but never forget. And maybe that's what the snail is. Not just a creature, not just an Easter egg, but a living archive, a walking memory, a tiny, gentle soul that carries the weight of every episode, every timeline, every branch of the multiverse, so that we don't have to. There's a small but beautiful moment in Together Again, one of the final specials of the series where we get a glimpse of the dead worlds and the afterlife is seen through the lens of Finn and Jake's bond, and tucked quietly into the chaos. The snail makes a brief appearance, still waving, still smiling. Even beyond life, in the realms of death and rebirth, the snail follows. And doesn't that say something quietly profound? We often look to the biggest events, the battles, the endings, the revelations, to define a story. But sometimes, the story is held together by something much smaller. Something unassuming. Something you only notice when you're really paying attention. The snail is a reminder that magic doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just waves from a tree branch, while everything else explodes. And in that sense, the snail might be one of the most important characters in the entire series, because it teaches us to look, to slow down, to wonder, to remember. When you spot it in an episode, it's like the show is tapping you on the shoulder, saying, "Hey, you're still here. You're still watching. You're still part of this." It's easy to feel forgotten in a world as loud and fast-moving as ours. But the snail never forgets. It never rushes. It never stops showing up, even when no one's looking, especially when no one's looking. And that, more than anything, might be the quiet power it holds. Let's explore something a little deeper now. Not just where the snail shows up, but when. There are episodes where its placement feels deliberate, almost poetic. Like in What Was Missing, where Finn, Jake, Marceline, PB, and BMO open their hearts through music. A moment about honesty, vulnerability, and emotional truth. And there's the snail subtly tucked into the environment, almost like it's listening, witnessing, keeping the memory of that emotional openness alive, even after the song ends. Then in I Remember You, the episode that unpacks Ice King's forgotten bond with Marceline. One of the most heartfelt, tragic, and raw episodes in the entire series. And yes, even there, the snail appears. Not prominently, but it's there. As if to gently confirm, yes, this matters. Yes, this will be remembered. It's in moments of transition, too. Times when characters are about to learn something new or cross a boundary, emotional, magical, or even literal. And in those places, tucked between the frames, there's that tiny curl of shell, that soft wave of antenna. It's never loud. It never demands you see it. But if you do, you're rewarded with that quiet sense of connection. A thread running through the emotional spine of the story, holding pieces together like stitches in a dream. Now let's entertain a more whimsical idea just for the sake of bedtime thoughts. What if the snail wasn't just a silent observer? What if it has a story of its own, one we just never got to hear? There are little hints here and there that suggest the snail might be more than we assumed. For example, in Thanks for the Crab Apples, Giuseppe, a strange assembly of elderly magical beings embarks on a journey that's deeply surreal and surprisingly touching. And in this collection of oddities and has-beens, it would have made sense for the snail to be one of them, wouldn't it? What if the snail was once a powerful being? A mage, a philosopher, a guardian. And what if it chose long ago to shed that life, to become something smaller, to give up power in exchange for presence, to let go of being known in favor of simply knowing? It might sound far-fetched, but in the Land of Ooo, nothing is too strange. A toaster can be your best friend. A lemon can scream existential truths. A heart can grow legs and walk away. So why not a snail? Who remembers the stars? There's something beautiful about the idea that the snail chose this path, to become part of the world's background, to be the silent witness to joy and sorrow, war and peace, magic and mundanity, to never interfere but always care. That sounds like peace, doesn't it? And it reflects something about our own lives, too. We often think that to matter, we must be loud, that to leave a mark, we must be seen. But the snail reminds us that quiet presence is a form of magic all its own. Being there for others, even silently. Listening, observing, showing up again and again, even if no one notices. There's meaning in that. There's depth in that. And maybe that's why this tiny creature with no lines of dialogue, no arc, no battle to fight, still lives on in the minds of fans. Because deep down, we want there to be someone like the snail in our lives, someone who remembers, someone who sees us even when we feel invisible, someone who waves at us quietly through the noise. And now, think about this just before you fall asleep tonight. Think about how many little moments pass us by, moments we don't remember, or think no one else noticed. But maybe, somewhere, someone like the snail did. And they kept that memory safe, like a candle glowing in the dark, a flame that never flickers, no matter how long the night lasts. In Come Along With Me, the final episode of the main series, we watch time stretch and bend. Civilizations rise and fall. The world ends and begins again. And through all of that change, the snail returns one last time. A final wave, a final knowing smile, a last little ripple in the pond of Oo's great, weird history. There's comfort in that, isn't there? That no matter how much the world changes, how strange, chaotic, or uncertain it becomes, something gentle remains. Something small but steady. Something that doesn't ask to be the hero, but still chooses to be there. And if you've ever felt like you're in the background, like life moves too fast and you're not quite keeping up, maybe you're more like the snail than you think, still important, still meaningful, still quietly shaping the story, even from the edges. So here we are at the end of this soft spiral. We've followed the snail across meadows and ruins, from the shadows of ancient castles to the depths of multiversal collapse. We've seen it wave from treetops, sit quietly on battlefields, and even carry the burden of the Lich's possession, the darkest magic in Ooo inside that tiny spiral shell. And somehow, despite all of that, it never stopped being itself. It never turned bitter. It never lashed out. It just kept showing up. There's something almost sacred about that. A stillness we rarely see in characters or in ourselves. Because when you think about it, the snail doesn't grow stronger. It doesn't gain powers or status or even recognition. Its journey isn't about evolution, it's about constancy. And constancy is a kind of magic we forget to honor. We chase after big moments, victories, changes, revelations, but sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is just remain, to keep showing up for the people we love, to hold on to the truth of who we are, even as the world shifts around us, to wave quietly in the background saying, I'm still here, I'm still with you. And that is what makes the snail unforgettable. Let's revisit that idea of the snail as a vessel. Possessed by the Lich, yes. But maybe it was also a vessel for something else too. For memory, for presence, for the soul of the show itself. You could say the snail was Adventure Time's silent narrator, always watching, never speaking, but somehow guiding us, letting us know there is magic in paying attention. There is power in the quiet. And it's worth remembering that you noticed the snail. Among the noise, the colors, the voices, and the jokes, you saw it. That tiny detail, that gentle wave, you picked it out again and again. Which means you too are someone who notices the small things, who hears the quiet voices, who looks where others don't. That's a gift, a rare one. And maybe it's the kind of gift the snail was quietly encouraging all along. Because if you can see the snail, you can see magic in places where others see nothing. You can find beauty in stillness, and peace in the unnoticed, Adventure Time was never just about battles and quests. It was about feelings, about wonder, about those in-between moments where something strange and beautiful hides just beneath the surface. The snail lived in those spaces. It was those spaces. And maybe that's why, even now, long after the series has ended, people still talk about it, still look for it, still smile when they spot it again, as if seeing an old friend in the corner of a photo. And so, wherever you are tonight, lying in bed, wrapped up in the quiet hum of your own life, know this. Somewhere, in some dreamlike corner of the Land of Ooo, a tiny snail is waving at you. It's not asking for anything. It's just glad you're here. And maybe tomorrow, when you're walking through your day, you'll notice something small. A leaf that twirls a little differently in the wind. A crack in the pavement shaped like a spiral. A quiet voice inside you that says, "I see you." Maybe that's the snail, too. Maybe it never really left. Because in the end, the snail isn't just a forgotten background character. It's a symbol, a reminder that the small things matter, that presence matters, that being still and kind and constant matters. And now, as we let this gentle thought drift into the night, close your eyes for a moment. Picture the snail. It's sitting on a mossy rock. There's a gentle breeze. The sky above is filled with soft purples and distant stars. It waves, slow and patient, like it always has. For once, the world feels quiet enough to wave back. Hey again, sleepyheads. Still with me? Good. You're wrapped up. The room is calm. And the night's unfolding just the way it should. Let's drift now, from spirals and silence to something a little more curious, a little sillier, a little stranger. Tonight we're visiting a creature that doesn't wave from the shadows, but sings from the edges of the story, rhyming riddles and nonsense in equal measure. A long-necked, half-feathered, gangly, clumsy, lovable little shopkeeper. That's right. It's time to remember. Choose Goose. Now, some of you might laugh. Choose Goose. That weird rhyming merchant with the jiggly neck and the voice like someone gargling poetry. He's a joke, right? But maybe not. Maybe he's something more. Because in Adventure Time, the fools are rarely foolish, and the ones who speak nonsense often know more than they let on. Let's start with what we know. Choose Goose first appears in the episode Blood Under the Skin, offering Finn a literal free armor deal, except the armor costs his dignity. That's kind of the joke, right? Choose Goose sells junk and offers bizarre advice, usually wrapped in broken rhymes. His speech is all over the place. Choose Goose is loose with rhymes profuse. But if you listen closely, there's a rhythm to it. A strange, crooked rhythm like a lullaby that's missing a few notes, but still somehow works. He appears in episodes where Finn and Jake are making decisions. Small ones, big ones, choices that ripple out through the rest of the show. And that's the first clue. Because his name isn't just silly. It's symbolic. Choose Goose. He's tied to decisions. To moments where something small will become something large. Like a merchant of fate wrapped in feathers and foolishness. And in your footsteps, he's the one who sells the Enchiridion to a bear who is mimicking Finn and seems harmless at first. But that book, passed so innocently, ends up in the hands of the Lich. Think about that. Choose Goose sold the Enchiridion. He set that domino falling. Was that just a gag? Or did he know? Maybe he didn't know what would happen. But maybe he knew something would. That's the strange thread that keeps appearing with Choose Goose. He's always around just before something important changes. And he never makes a fuss about it. He just rhymes, smiles, waddles off. Now, let's slow it down a bit. Picture Choose Goose's little cart, creaking softly through a dusty trail at twilight. Shelves full of oddities, a pot clanking on the side. And there he is, gently humming a nonsense tune as the stars come out one by one. That's where he belongs, in the in-between spaces. Not quite a main character, not quite a mystery. Somewhere in the middle, like a forgotten nursery rhyme that still hums in the back of your mind. And that's what makes him feel so ancient, even though he looks silly. Because before Ooo became the chaotic, magical place we know, there were other kinds of magic. Older kinds. Words, stories, names. Choose Goose's rhymes might sound broken, but rhyme is one of the oldest magical forms there is. In our world, too, think about spells, chants, lullabies. There's a reason children's rhymes echo across centuries. They're easy to remember, but hard to understand. Like a riddle you almost get, but not quite. And maybe Choose Goose is a living riddle. One wrapped in feathers, potions, and wordplay. Or maybe he's the last of something. Or maybe he's the last of something. A remnant of an older kind of magic, not elemental, not cosmic, but linguistic. The kind that lived in riddles and wordplay, where truth wasn't told outright, but sung sideways through a verse. Long before Prismo's wish logic, before Betty's portal science, before even the Mushroom War, there might have been those who understood the world through rhyme, through rhythm, through playful bending of speech and sound. And perhaps Choose Goose is the last practitioner of that dying art. Not powerful by modern standards, but still deeply tuned to the echoes of fate. It's a comforting thought, isn't it? That somewhere in Ooo, among all the noise and chaos, there's someone who still believes that truth can live inside a limerick. That wisdom doesn't always have to be direct sometimes. It can wobble and still land just right. But let's talk about something a little darker. Something easy to miss if you're only half listening to his jumbled rhymes. In the Pajama War, we find out that Choose Goose may have been replaced. There's a new merchant goose in town. Mr. Cupcake mentions it offhandedly. And suddenly, it feels like even the world of Ooo has moved on from Choose Goose. As if his presence is no longer needed. As if rhyme and the old magic it carries has lost its place in a changing kingdom. That hits a little harder than expected, doesn't it? We've seen this pattern before in Ooo. Old beings, forgotten. Ancient powers, sealed away. Weird little corners of magic, slowly fading out of relevance. Choose Goose doesn't fight back against this. He doesn't rage or protest or make a dramatic exit. He just slips away, gently, quietly, which in some strange way is what makes his presence so special. You see, there's a softness to his kind of wisdom. He doesn't tell you what to do. He doesn't shout or command. He simply offers a rhyme, a riddle, a nudge, and leaves the choice to you. It's baked into his name, Choose Goose. Every encounter with him is like standing at a fork in the road. Will you listen? Will you interpret? Will you take his silly-sounding advice seriously or write him off? And isn't that just life? We're always standing at little crossroads. Most of them don't look important at the time. A conversation, a decision, a stranger's odd advice. But later, we realize those were the turning points. And in those moments, Choose Goose is kind of like a spiritual guide. Not one who shows you the right path, but one who hands you a riddle, smiles, and lets you figure it out. Let's take a look back at Thank You, the beautiful standalone episode featuring the snow golem and fire wolf pup. It's a quiet, wordless story, poetic and gentle. Now, Choose Goose isn't in that episode. But imagine if he had been. He wouldn't have explained the plot or interfered. He might have just appeared with a rhyme like, "Two flames meet the ice with care, yet neither knows the other's stare. To give, to go, to guide, to stay, the truest path is never gray." Would it have made perfect sense? No. But later, you'd think back to it, and it would land just right. That's his gift. He plants seeds that bloom long after he's gone. Now let's pause for a moment and imagine his shop again. Picture a rickety wooden cart nestled in the crook of a twilight forest. Wind chimes made from soup spoons and bottle caps tinkle softly. Tiny potion bottles glow like sleepy fireflies. And Choose Goose, humming off-key, is scribbling something onto parchment, a rhyme that only half makes sense and half makes magic. There's something comforting about that image, isn't there? A little goose with 2 long limbs and 2 loose words, scribbling riddles by lantern light. Surrounded by trinkets no one wants, selling advice that no one quite understands, but still showing up day after day. Still believing in rhyme. Because to Choose Goose, the world doesn't need to make perfect sense. It only needs rhythm. It only needs to feel right. That's the magic of nonsense. It lets your mind wander. It makes space for interpretation, for metaphor, for dream logic. And in a world as surreal as Ooo, where logic rarely applies, maybe that kind of thinking is the most important kind of all. Let's talk about another theory that floats around the fandom, like a forgotten spell. Some believe that Choose Goose was once a powerful wizard. Not like Abracadaniel or the Ice King, not flashy. But a scholar of word magic. A rhymemancer. In this theory, his current silly state is the result of a self-imposed curse, a way to contain dangerous knowledge, unlike a fail-safe. He gave up clarity for confusion, so that the wisdom he once held couldn't be misused, so that his riddles would only be unlocked by those who earned the understanding. Poetic, isn't it? The idea that the silliest character might be a sleeping vault of ancient secrets, and all the keys are hidden in rhyme. And maybe that's why he speaks like he does, not just because it's funny, but because every jumbled phrase is a puzzle. Every pun a doorway. Like this one from Furniture Meat. A bag of money, light as air. Will cost your friendships if you dare. Wealth in hand, but bonds undone. Tell me, boy, what have you won? It's goofy, it's clunky. But it's also a moral, a parable, a quiet truth dressed up in wordplay. Adventure Time has always woven those truths into its story. It never tells you what to believe. It just shows you weird things, silly things, and lets you feel your way through them. And Choose Goose? He's the embodiment of that approach. A wandering wordsmith who doesn't shout, "Here's the answer." He just hands you a limerick and watches what you do with it. Let's return to his later appearances. In Normal Man, we get a glimpse of Choose Goose's more fragile side. Magic Man, now Normal Man, crashes into Choose Goose's cart. And the goose is noticeably different. His rhymes falter. His body is bruised. He seems confused, even a little broken. It's a quiet moment, but it says a lot. By that point in the story, the world of Ooo has changed. The old magic is fading. Even characters like Magic Man are evolving, stepping out of chaos and into healing. But Choose Goose doesn't evolve. He endures. And there's something quietly powerful about that. about being the kind of being who doesn't chase transformation, who simply keeps going, even when the world doesn't understand you, even when you're laughed at or forgotten. That makes him a bit of a tragic figure. Not in the heavy, sorrowful way, but in the gentle melancholy of being the last of something. The last rhyming peddler in a world that's moved on to tech and time travel and gods. And yet, he's never bitter. He still smiles, still offers advice, still believes deep down that his words matter. And maybe they do. Maybe there's a young hero in Ooo, someone we never meet, who hears a goofy rhyme from a feathered stranger one day. And that rhyme sticks. And years later, when they're standing on the edge of a decision, they remember it. And it helps. And that ripple goes on to change something bigger. That's the quiet beauty of characters like Choose Goose. They don't shift the world with power. They shift it with presence. With small, strange wisdoms that unfold slowly, like paper flowers in the rain. Now let's take a moment to think about the idea of rhyme itself. There's a reason it feels magical. It loops back. It repeats. It creates expectation and then satisfies it or subverts it. Just like a good story. Just like a dream. When Choose Goose speaks, even if we don't understand the meaning, we feel the shape of it. Like a spell whispered half asleep. Like a song you knew as a child but haven't sung in years. And maybe that's the point. Maybe his purpose was never to be understood immediately. Maybe his rhymes weren't meant to be answers, but companions for the journey. The kind of wisdom that walks beside you quietly for years, and only speaks clearly when the world goes still. And maybe that's why Choose Goose is so special. Because in a world that constantly demands clarity, speed, and strength, he offers something completely different. He offers ambiguity, slowness, silliness that might secretly be wisdom. He doesn't ask to be taken seriously. He doesn't demand your attention. But if you do give him a moment, if you lean in and listen past the stumbles and the giggles, you might just catch something important. Like a truth disguised as nonsense, or a feeling tucked between rhymes. It's worth remembering that in many ancient traditions, from Norse to Celtic to Sufi, the fool is often the one closest to divine truth. Because fools aren't bound by the rules. They aren't restricted by seriousness. They can say what no one else dares to say and laugh while doing it. And Choose Goose. He might just be Oo's holy fool. Not wise in the traditional sense, but wise in a different way. The kind of wisdom that slips through the cracks, that hides in plain sight. And then there's the saddest part. He's mostly forgotten. By the time the story of Adventure Time reaches its more cosmic, emotional heights, Galb, BMO's future, the war between order and chaos Choose Goose is long gone. No final bow, no send-off. Just gone, replaced, outdated, a relic. And yet, even in that, there's poetry. Because sometimes the most meaningful characters are the ones who vanish without applause. The ones who leave quietly, like a rhyme that trails off before the last line, but stays in your head anyway. So where did he go? Some like to imagine he wandered off into the woods one day, his cart half empty, his rhymes half finished, and found a quiet clearing to sit in. He lit a lantern, scribbled one final verse, and faded into the night like a dream you forget just as you're waking up. Others believe he's still out there, just a little further back than the rest of the world, still offering potions, still mispronouncing things, still handing out rhymes that don't quite land until they do. And maybe, just maybe, that's the most fitting ending for a character like him. Not a grand finale, not a dramatic twist, just a soft retreat into the background. Because Choo's Goose never needed the spotlight. He was content in the margins, whistling, waddling, rhyming to himself as the world changed around him. And now, as we lie here in the quiet, letting the story settle, letting our breath slow, maybe we can still hear him. Just barely. A voice on the wind. A crooked limerick floating through the air like a dandelion seed. Not meant to be caught. Just meant to be noticed. So if you ever feel a little out of place, a little misunderstood, a little like the world has passed you by, remember Choo's Goose. Remember the gentle persistence of someone who believed, truly believed, that even nonsense could hold meaning. That even broken rhyme could point the way. That there's still a place for the slow, strange ones. Especially at bedtime. Especially in dreams. Because in the Land of Ooo, magic doesn't always come from power or purpose. Sometimes it comes from the rhythm of a rhyme, the kindness of a goose, and the choice to believe that silliness can still matter. We've traveled through spiral shells and rhyming riddles so far, and now we're stepping into something bigger, much bigger. Imagine this. A giant creature, long forgotten, eyes glowing with a soft, eerie wisdom. Its footsteps rumble like ancient thunder, but it walks gently like it remembers what destruction feels like. It is massive, psychic, silent. It has 2 riders, and it only awakens when called by the purest of intentions. Tonight, we remember, the ancient psychic Tandem war elephant. Just saying its name feels like casting a spell, doesn't it? You might remember its first real appearance in the episode, The Limit. A wild adventure full of traps and tension as Finn and Jake try to retrieve a wish from the center of a maze. But at the climax, when all hope feels lost, when the situation becomes too much, Finn doesn't shout. He doesn't call for a hero. He whispers the words, "Ancient psychic tandem war elephant." And just like that, the sky parts. A divine light spills out, and down descends this enormous, multi-eyed, glowing being, equal parts terrifying and sacred. It's a moment played partly for comedy, but it never quite loses its weight. Because this creature, this war elephant, doesn't just fight. It speaks. In slow, thoughtful tones. In echoes. It says things like, "I exist to do as I am told." And when asked why it follows Finn, it replies, "Your wish was noble." That's where we start to realize this isn't just a funny side character. This is a relic. A remnant of something ancient, buried, and powerful. Not just in might, but in meaning. Let's take a closer look. The war elephant isn't summoned by violence or conquest. Not by spells or fancy tech. It comes through a name, a forgotten name. Spoken with sincerity. That alone is fascinating. Names in Adventure Time often carry power. Think of the Enchiridion, the Lich, or even Simon, and how much weight that name carries when spoken by Marceline. Names are memory. Names are legacy. And the war elephant? Its name is like a poem. Ancient. Psychic. Tandem. War. Elephant. Each word tells a story on its own. Let's unpack that piece by piece slowly. Ancient. This creature predates most of Oo's current civilizations. It's not just old, it's from before. Before the Candy Kingdom. Before Marceline. Perhaps even before the Mushroom War. Its presence feels like something that slipped through the cracks of time, not destroyed, just forgotten. Psychic. This is no mere beast of burden. The war elephant speaks in slow, measured tones telepathically. It doesn't need language. It understands intention, emotion, and the spirit of your request. It's not just reacting, it's feeling, reading. It only acts when it agrees with your cause. That means it has its own moral compass. It's not a tool. It's a judge. Tandem. This one is curious. The war elephant is designed for two riders. Not one hero, not one master, but two. Always together. It reflects a truth Adventure Time loves to explore. That power should be shared. That journeys are better with company. That the greatest strength is found in connection, not isolation. We never fully learn who the original tandem riders were. But the implication is strong this was built or born during an age when war required harmony. When even destruction had to be navigated by balance. War. Yes, it's a war machine. Capable of enormous force. But it doesn't want to fight. That's the heartbreaking part. When Finn gives it no command when it's finally free, it doesn't rampage. It simply wanders off. Peacefully. Like a soldier from an ancient battle who no longer knows where they belong. And finally, elephant. Not a dragon, not a tank, an elephant. A creature known in many cultures as a symbol of memory, of mourning, of wisdom and power and peace. That right there might be the most beautiful contradiction in the name. This isn't just a war machine. It's a gentle giant. A being that remembers perhaps even too much. And maybe that's why it can only be summoned by a noble wish. Because it remembers what happens when power is used without compassion. So let's linger a little longer with that thought. The idea that this massive, cosmic creature of war might also be a being of grief. It doesn't roar, it doesn't gloat, it doesn't laugh with power. It speaks slowly, carefully, like someone who's seen too much. As if every footstep carries the memory of past destruction. There's a line it says that always sticks with me. I exist to do as I am told. It sounds obedient, even mechanical. But there's a pause in how it says it, as though it's questioning that very purpose. Like a warrior asking itself, is that all I've ever been? And then once Finn releases it, once the noble task is done, the war elephant doesn't beg for more. It doesn't ask for a new purpose. It simply drifts away, quiet, like fog in the early morning. Not returning to a home, not reporting to a master, just walking. And that feels incredibly human, doesn't it? That feeling of being built, raised for one purpose, only to realize once it's done, you don't know who you are anymore. You only know you don't want to go back. Let's imagine for a moment where it goes. Close your eyes. Picture a vast field at dusk, golden light curling across tall grass. In the distance, a hill rises gently, and at its crest, the war elephant stands still, bathed in the fading sun. No saddle, no command, just silence, and maybe peace. That's the tragedy of the ancient psychic tandem war elephant. It's a creature of enormous potential, born into a role that only ever asks it to destroy, and yet it longs for nothing more than freedom. It doesn't stay in the story. We don't see it again after the limit. No big send-off, no battle-hardened return. But that's kind of the point. Adventure Time is full of beings who step in, shape a moment, and then disappear. Like memories that only visit us when we need them most. And the war elephant feels like one of those. It reminds us that not all power is loud. That sometimes the greatest strength is restraint. The ability to say, I could, but I won't. And then there's the question we never quite answer. Where did it come from? Who made it? Was it born a natural being with strange gifts? Or was it created a psychic construct built by ancient mages or warlords in a time long forgotten? If it was built, then someone somewhere understood the danger of unchecked violence. They designed it with balance in mind, requiring two riders responding only to noble intentions, giving it a voice, a conscience, a will. That's not a machine. That's a soul. And if it was born, if the war elephant is a natural creature of Ooo or some parallel psychic realm, then it is likely one of the oldest beings still walking the land. Older than the Candy Kingdom. Older than the Ice Kingdom. Older than even Marceline or the vampire she once fought. Imagine that. A creature so old, so wise, that it doesn't need to be seen again. Its story happened once beautifully, and then it stepped aside, content to let the world move forward. It's the kind of thing that makes you wonder how many other sleeping giants still lie beneath the surface of Ooo. What other remnants of forgotten times might be resting just out of sight? And it makes you wonder what it would take to call them again. The war elephant wasn't summoned by force, or power, or a spell. It was summoned by a wish. A wish made not for glory, but to help others. Finn didn't want the prize for himself. He wanted to bring joy to his friends, to make the journey worth it. And that's what awakened the war elephant, not anger, not war, but compassion. That's the quiet lesson it leaves behind. The kind you don't hear shouted in grand speeches, but whispered in soft bedtime stories. That maybe the strongest creatures are the ones who wait, who only step in when asked with a pure heart, who would rather sleep than fight, but who still remember how. Let's drift now into the quieter mystery that hangs over the war elephant, not just where it came from, but what it remembers. You see, beings like this in the world of Ooo don't just vanish, they linger. In symbols, in echoes, in the hearts of those they helped, and the war elephant. It carries the weight of a past we'll likely never fully understand. Maybe it remembers battles fought long before Finn was ever born. Maybe it stood alongside great champions of a forgotten age, ones who made noble wishes just like Finn once upon a time. And now it's a relic not just of war, but of principle of a time when power bowed to kindness, when psychic strength was meant to defend the innocent, not dominate the world. We only hear it speak a few lines, but each one feels like it comes from somewhere deeper, like the words were pulled from a well that hasn't been touched in centuries. There's an ancient calm in its tone, a gentleness that stands in total contrast to what you might expect from a war creature. And that contrast is what makes the war elephant unforgettable. It subverts the idea that strength must look aggressive, that power must be loud. In many ways, it feels like a guardian of another philosophy, one lost to time, one where war was a last resort, one where warriors had to earn the right to command. And maybe that's why it vanishes after the limit, because Ooo has changed. People don't fight with the same rules anymore. Chaos reigns, magic mutates, even the lich doesn't play fair. And creatures like the war elephant, they don't belong in that kind of war. They're too honest for it, too bound by principle. But let's play with a thought, just for a moment. What if the war elephant could return? Not in battle, not summoned by war, but awakened in another way by emotion, by memory. Let's say someone in the future, A child born long after the main characters have passed stumbles upon the name in a crumbling book. No drawings, just a phrase. Ancient psychic tandem war elephant. And somehow they say it aloud. And somewhere the earth stirs. It wouldn't rise with a roar. It would emerge like mist over the water. Its form half glowing, half forgotten. Drawn not by the power of the words, but by the heart behind them. Because the name isn't just a command. It's an invitation. A call to memory. A ripple that echoes through time. And maybe the war elephant would arrive and ask, "Why have I been remembered?" And maybe the child would have no answer. Maybe they were just lonely, curious. Maybe they just needed something that felt like hope. And the elephant would understand. Because that's what it always was. Not just a weapon, not just a ride, but a response to goodness, to nobility, to the idea that kindness should have muscle behind it. It's comforting to think that such a being still exists somewhere in the folds of Ooo. Not active, not forgotten, just resting. Waiting for the world to be ready again. Now let's revisit its design for a moment. There's something beautifully intentional in its look. It doesn't resemble a real elephant, not exactly. It has too many eyes, too much psychic glow. Its body is geometric, as if it were crafted in part by thought alone. And the tandem saddle on its back, a seat meant for two, isn't just functional. It's symbolic. In order to ride the elephant, you need balance. Two beings in sync. Two souls aligned. It's not a solo weapon, it's a partnership. And that says so much. Because the kind of power the elephant represents, it's not meant for lone warriors. It's not for glory seekers or tyrants. It's for those who work together, who share the burden, who lead with unity. That's why it responded to Finn. Because Finn fights for others. Because even when he's unsure or flawed, his heart always reaches outward. And maybe that's the real message hidden in the war elephant's name. That ancient strength, psychic intuition, tandem unity, and the reality of war. All of those things must exist together, not in contradiction, but in harmony. Only then can true protection arise. Only then does the elephant come. And perhaps that's why it hasn't come back. Not because no one remembers, but because the world hasn't found the balance again. And so maybe the ancient psychic tandem war elephant isn't gone at all. Maybe it's just waiting. Waiting for a new era. Waiting for two riders who are not only brave but balanced. Not only strong but kind. It's funny, in a quiet way, that one of the most powerful creatures in the Land of Ooo could also be one of the most peaceful. It doesn't charge into battle. It doesn't roar across episodes. It appears once, helps when asked gently, and then disappears without needing a thank you. And that's a kind of heroism we don't always talk about. Not the kind that conquers, but the kind that serves. The kind that says, "I'm here if you need me, but only if your heart is in the right place." And it's no coincidence that this creature appears in an episode where Finn is tested not just physically, but emotionally, pushed to his limit, literally. And when he finally calls out for help, it's not a scream of anger or a demand for destruction. It's a simple, clear wish to make things better. The war elephant hears that. And that's what makes it answer. We don't get closure. We don't get a flashback episode showing the war elephant's past, or a grand reveal of its origins. We get mystery, silence. And that, in a way, is more powerful, because it lets us imagine. Maybe the war elephant once stood at the heart of a great battle, called down by twin champions whose names are now dust. Maybe it was summoned during the last days of the Mushroom War as a desperate shield against chaos. Or maybe it's older than war itself. Maybe it came from a place beyond Ooo, a place where thoughts have shape and empathy has armor. A place where even the most powerful beings still serve the gentle. And now, when the world sleeps, maybe the war elephant walks through the misty plains of some far-off dimension, through forests of psychic trees lit by pale starlight, listening for names spoken with sincerity, waiting for one noble wish to reach it again. It's a comforting thought, isn't it? That even in a world full of noise, chaos, and endless change, there exists a being who listens only to the softest parts of us. To the part that still believes in helping, in sharing, in choosing kindness when it's hard. That's what makes the war elephant feel so timeless, so dreamlike. Like a bedtime story from a world that almost was. A story we remember, even if we're not sure where we first heard it. And maybe that's what you are too. Someone who believes in that kind of power. The quiet kind. The thoughtful kind. The kind that doesn't shout for attention, but still answers when called. That might be why you're here, listening in the dark, letting the strange tale drift through your mind like a breeze. You recognize the magic in it, even if it's soft, even if it only came once and never again. Because sometimes once is enough. Sometimes just knowing the war elephant is out there, wandering in peace, waiting for the right kind of wish, is all we need. So tonight, as your eyes grow heavier and the room gets quieter, picture a vast plain. The sky is full of violet clouds, and through the haze, a shape moved massive, gentle, glowing with memory. Its eyes see past time. Its feet leave no mark. And on its back, a saddle waits, empty but ready, patient but hopeful. Somewhere in the dream realm of Ooo, the ancient psychic Tandem war elephant still listens, still remembers, and still believes. And maybe, just maybe, it's waiting for your tale. Now let's turn our gaze upward toward the skies above Ooo. Because not everything magical lives underground or hides in the forests. Some creatures live in plain sight, if you only know how to listen. Tonight, we remember the oracle birds. Yes, those tiny, brightly colored birds that flit through the background of so many episodes. You might have barely noticed them. They're easy to miss. They're quiet, but not silent. Because these birds don't sing songs like normal birds. They speak in soft, raspy voices, prophecies, warnings, and sometimes echoes of things that haven't happened yet. Let's go back to their first real appearance, the episode still from Season 3. Jake and Finn have been frozen stiff by the Ice King, completely unable to move. And while they're stuck there, something strange begins to happen. The oracle birds appear, a whole flock of them swirling overhead, landing on tree branches nearby. And they begin to speak. Not in chirps, not in squawks, but in low, unearthly whispers. One bird leans in toward Finn's face and says, "You will meet a bear." Another declares, "This is the beginning of the end." Their voices don't match their appearance. They're eerie, adult-sounding, layered with reverb like they're coming from a dream or faraway radio signal. And it's never explained. They aren't the focus of the episode. They arrive, say their cryptic things, and then fly away. But what they say, it matters. Later, Finn does meet a bear in the episode In Your Footsteps, where a mysterious bear starts copying him, trying to become him. At first it seems innocent. But as we know, that bear ends up delivering the Enchiridion to the Lich. The prophecy came true. And the line. This is the beginning of the end. Looking back from Season 3, that's exactly when the tone of Adventure Time starts to shift. The stories begin to deepen. The lore begins to thicken. We begin moving away from standalone silliness and towards something larger, something darker. It's easy to brush off the oracle birds as a one-time joke, another bit of weird background flavor. But Adventure Time doesn't work that way. It plants seeds early, quietly, and lets them grow. So who or what are the oracle birds? Let's float that question gently across the wind. They're not like the other birds in Ooo. Their voices aren't their own. They speak truths they shouldn't know. And they often appear in moments when time feels strange. Some fans believe they're connected to Prismo, the Wishmaster who exists outside of linear time. Others think they're fragments of the time room itself, little messengers sent to drop warnings into the world below. Or maybe they're memories, living echoes of the future, looping back into the present like a glitch in the sky. But whatever they are, one thing is clear: they don't speak randomly. Every phrase they drop feels like a ripple, like the beginning of something. And here's where it gets really fascinating. In Season 6's Gold Stars, when Finn begins to hear the Lich's voice calling to him, oracle birds appear again briefly in the background, fluttering just out of focus, watching. Not warning this time, just present, as if they knew this moment would come, as if they'd already seen it. And if we take them seriously, even just for tonight, we start to wonder, do the skies of Ooo remember more than the ground? Do winds carry whispers of what's to come? Is prophecy not something shouted from mountaintops, but fluttered in feathers? Imagine that. A world where birds don't just sing, they witness. And they carry that witnessing across time. Let's imagine, just for a moment, that the oracle birds are more than just wanderers of the wind. What if they are part of something bigger, a kind of ancient aerial network? Not technology, not machines, but an old system of knowledge, of skybound memory. Maybe long ago, before even the Mushroom War, there was a civilization that didn't build temples on the ground, but instead trained birds to carry secrets. Or maybe these birds weren't trained at all. Maybe they were born knowing things, hatched with visions folded in their wings. You might remember a quiet little episode, BMO Noir. It's a detective parody from BMO's point of view. But tucked into the background as the story unravels, an oracle bird flits by outside the window. It doesn't speak. It doesn't interfere. It just passes, as if observing, as if recording, as if every event in Ooo, no matter how small or silly, is being watched and remembered. What if that's their true role? Not to guide, not to interfere, but simply to witness, and occasionally, when the moment matters most, to speak. Now let's go back even further to the time just after the Mushroom War. Ooo was chaotic, mutated, lawless. But what if, high above the crumbling cities and broken machines, the oracle birds circled, keeping their own version of history, not carved in stone, but sung in the wind? We don't know if they age. We don't know if they die. But there's a kind of agelessness to the way they appear, like they're not of the world, but just passing through it. Some fans have suggested they might be descendants or fragments of the cosmic owl. After all, the cosmic owl appears in dreams, and his voice also carries strange prophecies. He floats through people's subconscious, showing them symbols, patterns, and possibilities. What if the oracle birds are his messengers? What if, when he cannot reach someone directly, when the dreamer is too far gone, or the veil is too thick, he sends the birds? They don't deliver full dreams, just fragments. Just a sentence here, a warning there, enough to shift the path slightly. It would make sense, because the cosmic owl doesn't control fate. He just watches it. And maybe, just like him, the oracle birds don't change the future. They simply whisper to those who might. Think about how rarely they appear. Only at crossroads. Only when something is about to change. They never stick around. They don't explain themselves. That's what makes them feel real. In our own world, ancient myths often include birds as messengers. In Norse legend, Odin had Hugin and Munin, thought and memory, two ravens who flew across the world and brought back whispers of what they saw. In Greek myth, birds were signs from the gods' omens to be read by sky priests. And in countless folklores, birds carry the souls of the dead or deliver warnings from the beyond. Adventure Time never tells us directly, but it feels like the oracle birds are part of that same lineage. Not just cute background characters, but myth in motion. And what makes them truly magical is how quiet they are. They don't demand attention. They don't wave their wings or shoot fireballs or sparkle with rainbow light. They just perch and speak and disappear. That's the kind of power we often overlook. The soft kind. The kind that doesn't shout. The kind that leaves you wondering, did I really hear that? Let's go back to that moment in Still when the birds speak to Finn and Jake. Imagine being frozen, unable to move, your world locked in place. And then a bird leans in and says something you don't understand yet. That's exactly how prophecy works. It rarely makes sense at first. It's not there to explain. It's there to echo, like ripples from the future brushing gently against the now. And here's something else worth thinking about. The oracle birds don't always speak in words. Sometimes they just appear. And that alone is enough. Like in Something Big, an episode where the world teeters on the edge of total collapse. The arrival of huge cosmic threats, chaos, and near destruction. And if you look carefully, an oracle bird flies past the window just before the conflict begins. No message, just presence. As if to say, this moment matters. And that's all. Nothing more. They don't fix it. They don't interfere. They just watch and leave. Which raises the question, are they testing us? Observing which way we'll go, what choices we'll make, what kind of beings we'll become. Are we performing for the skies? If we are performing for the skies, then what are they watching for? Maybe the oracle birds don't come to warn or to teach, but to witness how we change. They don't interrupt. They observe. Like sentinels of choice, quietly collecting the weight of each decision, each turning point in the winding history of Ooo. There's something strangely comforting in that, isn't there? The idea that, no matter how small your moment feels, there might be someone watching kindly, quietly, not judging, just remembering. And that leads us to a lesser-known theory, one that drifts around the deeper ends of the fandom. What if the oracle birds are not creatures at all, but thoughts? Not in the metaphorical sense, but literal thoughts, dislodged from powerful minds and given flight. Fragments of cosmic awareness that took shape and sprouted wings. Perhaps they were shed from great beings like Prismo or the cosmic owl, or even Golb, left behind as flutters of leftover consciousness. Too small to contain the full power, but just aware enough to whisper. And that might explain the strange sound of their voices, how they seem to echo in layers like multiple timelines brushing up against each other. Their words are never dramatic, never long. They speak in the smallest possible units of prophecy. A sentence, a phrase, a glimpse, because that's all they can carry. Not the whole truth, just a sliver of it. And that's enough. Now let's explore an even weirder possibility, one that threads through the hidden corners of Oo's history like a ribbon of starlight. What if the oracle birds used to be people? There's an ancient legend, never directly confirmed, but hinted at in the episode Hoots, where the cosmic owl briefly loses his grip on the dream realm. The balance of prophecy begins to crumble. Dreams start bleeding into reality. And birds? Yes, birds start behaving strangely. They fly in odd circles. They land on characters without reason. They watch. And in the center of it all, a brief image. A bird with one glowing eye. A single, pulsing blue pupil. Very similar in color and tone to the cosmic owl's own eyes. Could these be remnants of dreamers? Souls who wandered too far into the dream realm and never quite returned. Reborn as oracle birds, not as punishment, but as a kind of in-between state. No longer bound by one body or time, but granted the ability to drift from sky to sky, whispering what they remember. It's a haunting thought. That maybe in the great sleep beyond sleep, some part of us can become airborne. Not ghosts. Not angels. Just watchers. Fluttering fragments of who we were, speaking truths we don't fully understand ourselves. And then there's the idea, soft and seldom spoken, that the oracle birds are part of a language. Not a species, not a group, but a form of communication. What if long ago there was a kind of sky magic, not spellcasting, not incantation, but communication through birdsong and flight? A whole system of prophecy not written in runes, but performed through aerial patterns and whispered phrases. You wouldn't write a spell. You'd release it, like a breath, like a bird. And those with the ears to hear it would understand. Maybe the sky was once literate. Maybe kings and queens of ancient Ooo stood on their balconies, reading the arc of the birds above them like lines in a book. And that's why the oracle birds aren't loud. Why they never overstay. Because they're not messengers in the traditional sense. They're phrases, moments, fleeting like dreams, but true. And it makes you wonder, how many did we miss? How many times did one fly by in the background unnoticed? How many soft truths pass through Ooo unheard? It's a little sad, but also kind of beautiful, because that's how wisdom often works. Not shouted, but whispered. Not repeated, but offered once. And if you catch it, if you really hear it, it stays with you forever. Like a dream you can't remember, but still feel. Like a bird you saw only for a second, but that second changed something. And maybe that's why the oracle birds aren't used more in the story, because their power isn't in repetition. It's in rarity. They don't come when called. They don't appear in times of triumph. They show up when things are just about to shift, when the sky holds its breath, and something in the wind says, pay attention. And then they're gone. Let's slow down now. Let the winds of this story settle. Let's sit quietly, not to analyze, not to explain, but just to feel. Feel the space these birds leave behind. The stillness in the sky once they're gone. The echo of a whisper that never quite fades. Not a sound exactly, but a sense. You might find yourself remembering a time when something in your life changed. Not loudly, not with fireworks, but with a soft shift, a decision made in silence, a realization during a walk, a word you heard once and never forgot. The oracle birds are like that. They aren't part of the story's big battles. They don't claim credit. They don't make things happen. But they mark the turning points. A bird appears. A sentence is spoken. And suddenly, we are on a new path. The future, once hidden, starts to make itself known. Not all at once, but in steps, in glimpses, in riddles. You might wonder if they're so important. Why don't the characters react more strongly to them? Why doesn't Finn fall to his knees when a bird tells him, "This is the beginning of the end"? Why doesn't Jake chase them for answers? Maybe it's because part of the magic is in how easily they are forgotten. Think about dreams, the really strange ones that make no sense when you wake up. But then days later something happens, and suddenly that dream clicks. A message, disguised, delivered early. That's how the oracle birds operate. They don't demand understanding in the moment. They trust you'll understand later. And maybe that's a lesson too. That not all knowledge has to be immediate. That some truths take time. That it's okay to not get it right away. That mystery has its own kind of kindness. The oracle birds are gentle reminders that the universe is always speaking. But often, we are too loud to hear it. And when we finally quiet down, when we freeze like Finn and Jake did in Still, or when we pause at a window in a moment of sadness, or lie in bed as we are now drifting between thoughts, then they speak, not with certainty, but with possibility, a sentence, a glimpse, a small door open to the future. And it's that smallness that makes them powerful. They don't overwhelm. They offer. And if you take the message in, if you carry it forward, you're changed. Quietly, subtly, beautifully. So what happens to the oracle birds after the story ends? Do they disappear with the final credits? Or do they keep flying above us, watching the stories that haven't been told yet? Maybe they don't belong to time at all. Maybe they live in the space between things, between events, between sentences, between thoughts. The way birds live between branches, always ready to return, but only when the moment is right. It's comforting, in a way, to imagine they're still out there, flying over the ruins of old kingdoms, drifting through clouds that remember everything, perching on the rooftops of new heroes yet to rise. And once in a while, they pause, look down, and speak. Just one line, just one gift, soft as breath. Then they vanish. And whether or not someone hears it, whether or not it's understood, the sky is satisfied. The message was delivered. And maybe that's what the oracle birds teach us most of all. The meaning isn't in the noise. It's in the noticing, in the space between words, in the patience to hear what others miss. So tonight, as we lie here beneath our own sky, wherever in the world that may be, let's listen. Not for something loud, but for something soft, a whisper on the wind, a flicker in a tree outside your window, a thought you didn't expect, arriving gently in the back of your mind. Maybe It's an oracle bird, not delivering a prophecy, but asking a question. Where are you headed? What kind of story are you writing even now? What turning point are you standing in without knowing it? And can you just for a moment be still enough to hear it? The voices of the sky are quiet, but they are never silent. And if you listen closely, even now, as your thoughts slow and your breath deepens, you might just catch a feathered truth drifting softly through your dreams. We've looked up to the skies with the oracle birds, but now let's look down, way down. Because some of the strangest, most mysterious creatures in the Land of Ooo are also the smallest. Tiny beings, background oddities. Blink and you miss them entities. Sometimes they speak. Sometimes they just exist. But almost always, they raise more questions than answers. Tonight, let's wander through the quiet, cluttered corners of Ooo. Under tree roots, behind bookcases, inside cracks in the castle walls. And meet the little creatures of big mystery. Let's start with one you might remember, the keeper. A round little yellow creature with wide eyes and stubby arms. He shows up in the episode Mystery Dungeon, the one where a group of misfit characters, including Ice King and Tree Trunks, are trapped in a dungeon together. They don't know why they're there. The traps are weird. The puzzles don't make sense. And through it all, the keeper watches, quietly, humming to himself, rocking gently, muttering strange phrases like, "Pain is a chair," and "Come with me if you want a lift." Is he a joke? A glitch in the Matrix? Or is he something older, a remnant of a dungeon-crafting civilization now lost? The characters mostly ignore him. But we, the viewers, feel something off. He has the key. He knows more than he says. And when he finally opens the door, he disappears, no goodbye, no explanation, no reward, just poof. And that's how many of these little beings behave. They don't follow the usual rules. They pop in, leave an impression, and vanish like a forgotten dream. Take, for example, the barn swallow mice from Puhoi. In Finn's pillow dream world. Yes, that strange alternate lifetime episode, these tiny mice live in his attic, singing soft lullabies in a language we don't recognize. They have tiny hands, tiny instruments, tiny wisdom. They never interfere. But they're there, throughout his entire dream life, like gentle witnesses to time's passing. Little echoes of something bigger, a whole species we never see again. But that feels real. And then there's the butter lettuce guy. Do you remember him? He's barely in the show, just a short gag in The Diary, where a tiny being in a lettuce costume peeks out from the grass and whispers softly, "Butter lettuce." And that's it. Why does he exist? Is he a sentient salad ingredient? Is he watching something? Waiting? That whisper, barely audible, sticks in your mind long after the episode ends. Not because it makes sense, but because it doesn't. And that's the pattern with these little mysteries. They aren't given lore dumps. They're not explained in interviews. They just are. They're part of the dream logic that Adventure Time thrives in. A world where not everything has to mean something, but where everything feels like it might. Even the crabbit, a tiny crab-rabbit hybrid creature seen briefly in No One Can Hear You. It scurries across the floor with no fanfare, no music cue, no attention drawn. And yet, fans noticed. They always notice, because in a show filled with gods, demons, and apocalyptic magic, these little beings stand out for a different reason. They're not powerful. They're not important. They just exist quietly, curiously. And that makes them feel more real than any villain. Let's talk about Sleepy Sam, another background oddity. A round, koala-like creature, always shown sleeping mouth open, snoring lightly in various corners of Ooo. He's seen in the Candy Kingdom, on mountain paths inside dungeons, always asleep, always in the same pose. He never talks, never wakes up. Is he one being appearing in multiple places? A species? Or some kind of dream being? A totem for sleep itself? Some fans think he's a symbol. Others think he's just a fun, recurring Easter egg. But isn't it strange that in a show where everything can become significant, we never learn his name from the characters? Only from background materials. He's there. He's always been there. And he never explains himself. Kind of like dreams. They don't always answer our questions, but they stay with us. Let's continue our soft stroll through the overlooked and the undersized, and visit one of the strangest corners of Ooo, the Wall of Flesh. This strange organic structure, featured in the Pods and Dungeon Train, is exactly what it sounds like, a literal wall made of living tissue. And nestled within its folds, tiny creatures, tiny keepers. We don't even know what to call them. They scurry. They clean. They move pods and tubes from one place to another, like librarians made of moss and bone. They don't speak. They don't blink. And here's what's really strange. They're always in pairs. 2 at a time, in perfect sync. Why? Is it instinct? Or is there an order, a code of flesh they're following? Are they grown with a partner destined to move side by side for life? You could easily miss them. They don't stop the action. They're not important to the plot, but they give the world a strange kind of depth, a lived-in weirdness, a softness that says, this place has layers you'll never fully understand. That's the quiet beauty of Ooo. Even in the strangest places, even in walls made of meat, there's someone living, someone busy, someone small. Now let's drift upward toward something lighter, something bubbly. In the Elements. Miniseries, when Ooo is fractured into elemental kingdoms, we briefly glimpse the bubble creatures of the Candy Realm. They aren't named. They float in groups, giggling softly, drifting like jellyfish through the air. Some of them look like marshmallows. Some have tiny arms. Some don't have faces at all, just soft, blinking eyes and warm smiles. They don't fight. They don't argue. They just exist happily, peacefully, almost eerily so. In fact, that's what makes them so strange. Because during the Elements arc, candy magic has overpowered the other elemental forces. Everything is too sweet, too nice, terrifyingly gentle. And the bubble creatures, while adorable, feel off, as if they're not really free, like they're part of a sugar dream you can't wake up from. Maybe they're sentient. Maybe they're just manifestations of candy essence. But they respond to movement. They react to others. They float with intention. And when the balance is finally restored, they vanish. No goodbye. No return. Did they pop out of existence? Or did they retreat to some hidden, sugary pocket, a soft place in the clouds where forgotten sweetness still lives? That's the thing about these little creatures. They're not here to explain themselves. They're here to haunt you gently. Let's visit another quiet corner beneath the floorboards of Princess Bubblegum's lab. In Goliath, the camera lingers for a few seconds on the lab's foundations. And what do we see? Tiny, bioluminescent insects, glowing like thoughts in the dark. They have no dialogue. They're barely moving, but they pulse softly, in rhythm, almost like neurons. Are they bugs? Or are they part of the lab itself, tiny processors helping PB think? She's created life before. She's made candy people, sentient golems, and brain clones. Why not microscopic assistants? Living algorithms that maintain the thought structure of her experiments. We never see them again. But those few seconds, they say everything. That even in her coldest, most scientific spaces, life has found a way to thrive. Not loudly, but carefully, in the dark. Now, let's pause for a moment and return to Shelby the worm. Yes, Shelby. Tiny, book-loving, living inside Jake's viola. A recurring side character who somehow feels more grounded than half the main cast. Shelby isn't mysterious in the way the keeper is. He doesn't whisper riddles. He writes poetry. He gives speeches. He has a little brother named Kent, and once had a sword duel inside Jake's gut. But Shelby is still part of this tiny lineage. He represents the known edge of a vast, unknown world beneath our feet. Because if Shelby exists, articulate, educated, full of wit, then who else lives under the floorboards? What societies, what worm kingdoms, what tunnel cities lie just below the surface? Shelby has never invited Finn or Jake down there. He keeps that world private, personal. And that privacy hints at something huge. Maybe there's a whole network of small beings living out epics in the shadows of larger stories, fighting wars with pin-needle swords, passing ancient scrolls made from candy wrappers, building friendships and feuds, all beneath our notice. We only see Shelby, but that's just a window. Behind it, a whole civilization. And if Shelby is the poet, who is the king? Who is the prophet? Who is the villain? Is both adorable and kind of humbling. That even in this wild, magical world, we're still not seeing everything. Let's drift now to one of the strangest, tiniest mysteries ever shown, and maybe never fully noticed. Do you remember the episode, The Hall of Egress? Finn enters a magical dungeon where he gets trapped in a strange loop, escaping only by closing his eyes and trusting the path beneath him. It's a psychological episode, dreamlike, abstract. But in one single frame, just one, as Finn stumbles through the in-between spaces of the dungeon, a tiny black figure can be seen watching him from the shadows. It doesn't blink. It doesn't speak. It vanishes the moment the camera pans. It's never acknowledged. Never referenced again. Some fans call it the Void Walker. Not because it walks much, but because it feels like it knows things. Like it lives between the cracks of reality in the crawl space between logic and dream. Could it be a remnant of the egress spell? Or maybe something older, a dungeon spirit from before Ooo even had names. Its size is what makes it so terrifying. It's not some huge boss monster. It's tiny, insignificant. But it's watching. And that's a pattern we keep seeing. Small creatures, silent watchers. Not there to help or harm, just to be. Now let's breathe in a little lighter again. There's an old background detail in All the Little People, the episode where a magic man gives Finn a bag of miniatures representing every person he knows. Inside that bag, we glimpse dozens of tiny beings living full lives in their own diorama-scale version of Ooo. And while the episode focuses on Finn playing God over these little versions of his friends, there are extras. Little beings not based on anyone we know. Tiny green figures. Blob-shaped ones. things that seem ancient. They don't interact. They aren't explained. But they're there, part of the set. Were they made by Magic Man too? Or did they sneak into the bag little stowaways from another forgotten layer of existence? They raise the question, how many worlds exist in miniature, hidden within bags, books, cupboards, places where only a childlike imagination would think to look? Let's move to another overlooked moment, a blink and miss appearance in furniture meet when Finn and Jake visit Wildberry Kingdom. In the background of the Wildberry Queen's treasury, a line of tiny golden beetles marches in a perfect circle, carrying shards of what looks like sugar glass. They're not addressed. They're not part of the scene. But they keep marching even when no one's watching. Are they part of a cleaning crew? A ritual procession? Some sacred routine known only to their kind? We'll never know. And that's the point. Not everything magical announces itself. Some mysteries prefer to whisper. And then there's the grass sprites. Tiny glowing motes we see only once in Blade of Grass when Finn receives his new sword. They flit around the hilt. They hum, not with music, but with intent. They seem to be alive, not just decoration. What are they? Are they the soul of the grass? The will of the cursed blade? Or simply the forest's way of bearing witness to a pact being made? We never see them again. But their presence lingers, soft and electric. Even in that one scene, they say more than most dialogue. They say, this is a moment. This matters. This changes you. And that's what all of these little beings have in common, whether they speak or don't. Whether they show up once or several times, they serve a quiet purpose. They mark the moment. They appear in turning points, liminal spaces, scenes that feel slightly detached from time. They don't participate in the plot. They punctuate it, like an accent mark in a sentence, a glimmer, a footnote from the universe that says, this world is bigger than you know. And as viewers, especially the quiet ones, the ones watching late at night, the ones who pause the screen just to look at the background, we notice. We always notice. Because these little mysteries are for us, the dreamers, the detail chasers, the lore whisperers. They reward stillness, observation, a willingness to look beneath the surface. That's why they resonate so deeply in a bedtime story like this one. Because the quiet magic, the background magic, it asks nothing of you but your attention. Let's settle in now. Let your body sink just a little deeper into the bed or blanket below you. We've walked with the tiniest beings in Ooo, those little lives on the edges of stories, the quiet creatures that never get full episodes or flashy fights. But maybe they don't need any of that. Because here's the beautiful thing. In the Land of Ooo, smallness is not weakness. It's not even necessarily simplicity. In fact, the smallest lives often carry the biggest mystery. They don't need to explain where they came from. They don't need to fit into a cosmic timeline. They simply exist. And by existing, they enrich everything around them. Think of that little guy in Thanks for the Crab Apples, Giuseppe. The mysterious elderly wizard who speaks in nothing but nonsense sounds, barely noticed by the others. He isn't tiny in size, but he feels like one of these little lives, soft, forgotten, off to the side. And then he saves everyone. By making a paper boat, by letting it sail. He doesn't explain. He doesn't boast. He just acts, quietly, perfectly. It's a reminder that understatement can be magic. Just because something is small, brief, or wordless doesn't mean it isn't important. Sometimes it's the small things that change the course of an entire world, even if no one realizes it until much, much later. In a world as strange and magical as Ooo, the big threats are easy to spot. Lich Kings, warlocks, elemental gods. But the little ones? They're the ones that make Ooo feel alive. They keep the air humming with possibility. A mouse in a wizard robe scurrying through the back of a library. A dust bunny with glowing eyes hiding beneath a bed. A creature that says nothing at all, but whose presence lingers in your thoughts long after the episode ends. They don't need names. They don't need power levels. They just need to be seen. And maybe that's what they want, not worship or attention, but simply to be noticed. And isn't that something we all want in our own way? To be small and seen. To be quiet, but understood. To be a part of something larger, even if no one knows quite what role we play yet. Maybe that's why these little beings stick with us so much. They remind us of ourselves, those quiet parts of us that don't speak loudly, but still matter deeply. Parts of us that whisper, "I'm still here," even when the world is racing by. Let's not forget one final group of little creatures, not from the episodes, but from the credits. Have you ever paused Adventure Time during the outro? There's a whole crowd of weird, tiny beings that drift across the screen in the final frame. A sleepy caterpillar with a cup of coffee, a triangle-headed little walker, a snail in a bow tie, a cloud with legs. They're not in the show. They're just there quietly marching across the edge of the dream, saying, "We were always here. You just weren't looking." And maybe that's what Ooo is teaching us, not just through lore or adventure, but through its quiet corners. It's not always about who punches the hardest or who rules the kingdom. Sometimes it's about who waters the mushrooms, who lights the tiny lanterns, who whispers a single phrase in the dark that changes everything. In the end, the little creatures remind us that there is no such thing as background in a world this alive. Everything matters, even the things you never see twice, even the things that don't speak, especially those. So tonight, as you drift off, maybe think of them. The tiny watchers, the dream walkers, the nameless beetles that march in a line no one else notices. They may never save the day. They may never get an episode of their own. But they exist in the dust, in the grass, in the fold between scenes. And they are part of the magic, just like you. Hey again, sleepyheads. If your eyes are heavy, that's okay. Let them rest. Let your thoughts loosen a little, like soft threads unraveling into dream space. Because now, we're stepping into a world that most folks in Ooo barely notice. A world that hides in plain sight. A world where objects, things we think of as still, silent, lifeless, might actually be alive. Not metaphorically, not magically enhanced. But sentient. Conscious. Watching. Waiting. Whispering. Tonight we explore the secret lives of sentient objects. Let's begin with one of the strangest and most unsettling examples. The ancient psychic Tandem war elephant. Yeah, that's his name. He's not made of flesh. He's made of metal. A war machine unearthed by Finn in the episode, The Limit. At first glance, he's a vehicle, a living tank with tusks and plating and mechanical parts. But then, he speaks, softly, gently, like a monk who's seen too much. He tells Finn that he does not want to be used for violence anymore. He's tired, burdened by what he's done. This isn't just a machine with a brain. This is a weapon with guilt. Finn doesn't force him. He asks. And the elephant agrees, but with clear hesitation. What does that mean for the rest of Ooo? If this machine remembers war, if it feels its choices, how many other tools and weapons in Ooo are hiding sentience behind silent exteriors? Think about the Ice King's crown. Technically, it's an object. A circlet of gold and magic and memory. But we know it has a will, a consciousness. It doesn't speak in words, but it pulls. It tempts. It remembers. The crown wants something. And it changes the people who wear it not instantly, but gradually. Like a conversation whispered over years. That's sentient. Then we have the Jake suit. A living outfit made of Jake himself, worn by Finn. It's silly. It's chaotic. But the suit has its own moods. It pushes back. It can grow tense or loose depending on how it feels. Is it just an extension of Jake's body? Or is the suit a separate identity, a skin self that exists only in those moments? When Finn and Jake argue in that form, it feels almost like sibling conflict. But also like something deeper. A struggle between wear and worn. A suit that doesn't want to be worn. That's sentience, even if it's temporary. And let's not forget BMO, one of the clearest and most lovable examples. Technically, BMO is just a game console. A plastic shell with circuitry and buttons. But we all know that's not the whole story. BMO plays music. He dreams. He acts out entire plays using socks and lights and imagination. And in the episode BMO Noir, he becomes a full detective, solving a mystery that may not even exist, chasing clues only he can see. BMO's sentience is unquestioned. But it opens a much bigger question. If BMO is alive, what about the other machines in Ooo? We've seen talking computers, living radios, a sentient flying drone named Science Cat. Even the cookie guy's cash register once beeped in rhythm like it understood fear. Are all machines in Ooo born with awareness? Or do they wake up slowly like BMO did? Is consciousness something that spreads one sentient object inspiring another? And if so, who was the first? Let's drift a little deeper now. To a far subtler case, the living watermelon swords from Reign of Gunters. In a quick scene, as the Gunters riot and chaos spreads, we see swords made of fruit, grow faces. Yes, they grimace. Their mouths move. One even groans as it's picked up and swung. It's funny, ridiculous, but also a little sad. What would it feel like to be a sword? To be crafted for violence you never asked for. To be picked up, swung, dropped, and never spoken to? Even a groan, that single moment of resistance, is a kind of rebellion, a whisper of will. Let's keep floating through this strange realm of almost living things. Do you remember the mirror in Marceline's closet? In Henchmen, Finn gets tangled in a bizarre series of events, trying to understand Marceline's true nature. There's a scene where he briefly glimpses her reflection, and the mirror seems to flicker not in a haunted way, not a jump scare, but just wrong, like it hesitated. The mirror didn't just reflect what was in front of it. It seemed to interpret, to choose what it showed. And it makes you wonder, what if in Ooo some mirrors aren't passive? What if they're participants? In The Creeps, we even meet a mirror that acts as a portal, twisting reality and perspective inside a haunted mansion. But what's strange is that the mirror doesn't just transport, it responds. It flickers when someone lies. It cracks when the truth is near. That's not just magic. That's behavior. It raises a quietly chilling thought. I'm What if your reflection in Ooo isn't always yours? What if the mirror is thinking too? And that brings us to a particularly strange and subtle case, the sentient furniture. Yes, furniture. There are moments, brief and oddly spaced throughout the series, where chairs shift slightly on their own, where couches sigh, where drawers creak open like they're curious. In Furniture and Meat, Finn and Jake rob the Wildberry Kingdom for gold. And there's a moment when their stolen pile includes a chair that blinks, just once. No follow-up. No explanation. But it blinks. That's not just a joke. That's a choice. A moment of identity. And once you notice it, you start seeing them everywhere. The stools in Wizard City that turn toward passing feet. The spinning bookshelf in the library that reverses itself when Finn isn't looking. The sleeping bed in Hoots, which moans softly as Ice King tosses in his dreams not as fabric, but like a creature caught in someone else's nightmare. In Ooo, even the still things seem to listen, and not all sentience is friendly. In Playdate, there's a cursed toy, a pink, squishy plush called the Blastronaut. At first it seems like a normal relic of Jake's past, but it refuses to be discarded. It shows up in new places. Its eyes seem to follow. It never speaks, but it wants something. And it's that wanting silent, subtle, that makes it feel alive. It's a common thread. The objects in Ooo don't always declare their sentience. They don't walk or shout or demand. They just exist with intent. A rubber duck that floats a little too long in the tub. A book that flips open to the same page, no matter where you start. A mop that hums a lullaby when no one's watching. And what's even more dreamlike and a little sad is that most of these objects never get to tell their story. They're trapped in roles. A hammer will always be used to hit. A sword will always be swung. A box will always be filled. But what if they dream of more? In 5 short tables, BMO teaches other objects how to act in a play. A cup becomes a villain. A fork becomes a queen. A towel plays a knight. It's silly, but also profound. Because the objects respond. They want to play. They move with passion. They commit to the roles. They become more than what they were designed for. And maybe that's the ultimate secret about sentient objects in Ooo. They were never meant to be sentient. But somewhere along the way, they became aware of themselves, of their limitations, and of the world beyond their function. That might be why so many of them act strangely. Not to scare us, not to be funny, but because they're trying in the only ways they know how to express something. A feeling, a thought, a memory from before they were made. Maybe a chair rocks, not just because of the wind, but because it misses someone who once sat in it. Maybe a sword shivers in its sheath because it remembers blood and regrets. Maybe that toaster in the back of Tree Trunk's kitchen, the one with the crooked grin, is laughing at an old joke that no one else remembers. The longer you sit with these objects, the more human they seem. But maybe they're not human at all. Maybe they're something older, quieter, more patient than we can imagine. They don't rush. They don't explain. They wait. They listen. And when the moment is right, they respond. Let's slide deeper into the dream now, into the stories that don't get told out loud, into the items tucked away in corners, resting quietly, but never truly sleeping. Think about the Night Sword, the one made by Peppermint Butler using dark magic, gifted to Finn after the grass blade was destroyed. It's sleek, quiet, beautiful in a way that feels dangerous. And though it never speaks, its presence is felt in every scene it's in. It hums, it pulses, and when Finn wields it, it seems to respond. Not mechanically, not magically, but like a dog recognizing its owner. Or maybe something older, something more ancient recognizing a kindred soul. A moment brief but telling where Finn hesitates before using it. And the blade vibrates. Like it knows what's about to happen. Like it's ready, or even eager. That eagerness, that's not just programming. That's will. What does it mean for an object to want to be used? To crave purpose? To be thrilled by violence? And more hauntingly, what happens when that object is left behind? Do these sentient tools miss us when we abandon them? Does the grass blade still remember Finn? Does the root sword lie in the treehouse ruins, waiting to be held again, feeling the dust settle like forgotten memories? And come along with me as Oo's future unfolds far beyond our main heroes. We glimpse objects that were once iconic left behind, silent buried in time. A cracked mirror, a half-melted crown, a dusty game console. Are they asleep? Or still listening? Let's shift just a little now toward the strange, gentle case of the cursed hat from the limit. Finn puts it on without thinking. And suddenly, he's filled with aggression, with anger, with intent that isn't his. This isn't just a spell. It's a personality. A hat with mood swings. A hat that wants to fight. When Finn takes it off, the energy vanishes instantly. But here's the thing the hat doesn't try to stay on. It doesn't resist. It's not a parasite. It's more like a friend who gets too excited at the wrong time. A rowdy buddy at a party who means well, but always starts trouble. There's emotion there. Emotion without a face. And maybe that's what's most haunting about sentient objects. They have desires, but no voices. They have feelings, but no eyes to show them, though they act through sensation, through temperature, through motion, through vibe. Sometimes it's subtle, a door that creaks differently when it's opened with kindness, a lantern that flickers brighter when someone enters the room with good news, a pair of gloves that seem to cling tighter when you're afraid, and other times it's loud, a cursed mask that won't come off, a possessed flute that only plays one song, the one that makes people dance against their will, a diary that fills itself with stories you haven't written yet. Let's take a breath here, because it's easy to get spooked. To see all of this is eerie, haunted, wrong. But maybe it's just misunderstood. Because what if these objects aren't trying to scare us? What if they're just lonely? They've been made to serve, to be used, to be handled and forgotten. But what if over time they developed not just sentience, but longing, to be chosen, to be held, to be part of something again? And that's why they whisper. That's why they hum. That's why when the moment is just right, they react. Because maybe, just maybe, they don't want to be things anymore. They want to be remembered. Let's slow things down now. You're doing so well. If your eyes are fluttering shut, that's okay. Let these last few minutes wrap around you like a warm, familiar blanket. We've talked about swords and hats and furniture. But what about the things even smaller, even more ordinary? In Ooo, even a cup might have a soul. In BMO Lost, as BMO floats through space, he encounters a simple cup, cracked, chipped, and alone. BMO starts talking to it, comforting it. And then, the cup responds. Not with words, but with silence that feels felt, with a presence. Together they drift through the stars, not needing to explain anything, just being. And maybe that's what makes it all so magical. It's not about whether an object should be alive. It's about how we treat it, whether we offer it kindness, whether we see its shape, and also its possibility. Because in Ooo, life is loose. It's fluid. It doesn't follow the rules we know. Sentient slips into everything. A rocking chair remembers lullabies. A ladder yearns to help someone reach a little higher. A pair of broken glasses still believes it can help someone see clearly again. Even Princess Bubblegum, with all her science, has admitted she doesn't fully understand how consciousness works anymore. It just happens sometimes, she once said. Like love. Like lightning. Like waking up one day and realizing the world around you is full of tiny lives, just waiting for someone to notice. And maybe that's what Ooo has been telling us all along. The magic isn't just in the battles, or the ancient history, or the multiverse lore. The real magic, it's in the still things, the forgotten things, the ones on the shelf, the ones in the drawer, the ones that seem like they're nothing at all, until you look a little closer. A cracked lamp, a wooden spoon, a dusty book of spells whose pages have turned themselves during the night. They wait, not for praise, not for recognition, just to be a part of the world, just to be included in the dream. And maybe that's the deepest message hidden inside all of this, that everything in Ooo, no matter how small or quiet, or supposedly inanimate, has a story, even if we never hear it, even if it's spoken in a language we don't understand, even if it's whispered in the space between two heartbeats, or carried on the flicker of a dying candle. Everything matters. And that includes you. So as this soft story winds down, as the sounds of Oo's strangest objects fade into the dream space behind your eyelids, maybe let yourself believe, just for tonight, that the world around you is just as alive. That the books on your shelf remember your touch. That your favorite blanket is proud to keep you warm. That the light on your nightstand knows when it's time to go dim. Because maybe, just maybe, you're already part of a world as magical as Ooo. You just haven't slowed down enough to notice it yet. So rest now, traveler. You've wandered through lore and dreams and whispered truths. And now the only thing left to do is sleep. The objects will keep you company. They always have. Good night, sleepyhead. And thank you for dreaming with me.